via Twitter and via the app as well. Our next speaker is Sir Lockwood Smith, who's come all the way from New Zealand to speak to you.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for the opportunity to share a few thoughts with you, and thank you to the sponsors who helped make it possible. Now, given your decision to leave the EU, the greatest prize is the opportunity to create a smart global trade strategy. That is the real prize from leaving the EU. It genuinely does offer a world of opportunity. New Zealand started our global trade strategy back in the mid-1980s. And in 34 years, it's transformed New Zealand from a protected, bankrupt country, as we were in the mid-1980s, to a country today that, in the Legatum Institute's Global Prosperity Index, New Zealand ranks in the top 3 in the world. That's what a smart global trade strategy can help achieve. Now, the critical thing for you is, don't let your Brexit agreement destroy that opportunity for you. That is absolutely critical for you if you are to be able to win anything out of leaving the EU. Now, a smart global trade strategy essentially has 4 elements: a unilateral element, a bilateral element, a plurilateral element, and a multilateral element. Let me start with the unilateral element. That's opening up your market. It's the best place to start because you don't have to wait for other countries to agree to anything, you can get on with it. And the impact of that on the uptake of science and technology, the impact on innovation, the impact on productivity improvement is just extraordinary. And it lays the foundation for maximising the benefits you can achieve from free trade agreements globally, and it shows leadership. Now, I know some people say, and I suspect Barry would say, but it would lead to a race to the bottom. Lead to a race to the bottom. I've heard it even at this conference. That's not been our experience. Let me share a couple of stories. Back in the mid-1980s, the New Zealand wine industry was protected by a 40% tariff. Couldn't import cheap wine because paid a 40% tariff on it. We produced it. The industry was in crisis. We had a wine lake. You couldn't export the stuff. It was equine urine. No self-respecting person would drink it. The tariff was wiped in 1985, just wiped in 1 year. Innovation has transformed the industry. Today, wine is New Zealand's second biggest export to the EU. Here in the UK, we command the highest average price of any country in the world on the UK market. And we earn twice as much now from wine exports from New Zealand as we do from wool exports. That's, some might say, well, that's just a little industry like wine. But take a bigger industry. In 1985, the subsidies and the support payments were wiped from our sheep industry. When they were, we had 70 million sheep in New Zealand. We only had 3 million people at the time, but we had 70 million sheep. Today, we've got 27.5 million sheep, less than half the number. We produce the same amount of sheep meat from less than half the number of sheep. Whereas 34 years ago, we were turning frozen carcasses into fertilizer, today a lamb is cut into 42 different products and could be marketed in any one of 100 different countries around the world. One lamb could go to 42 different countries around the world. Productivity has increased 161%. Remember yesterday, Sir Mark Walport said that here, sheep industry productivity improvement's been pretty much negligible since the 80s. New Zealand, 161%. We produce the same amount of sheep meat using 23% less land, and greenhouse gas emissions have been reduced 40% per kilogram of sheep meat produced. Now, bilateral agreements are critically important. New Zealand started with Australia, and just as you need to start with the EU and get a top free trade agreement with the EU. With our agreement with Australia, it's actually a deeper agreement than the EU common market. But there are 2 critically important elements with it. One, it's not a customs union, and that is vitally important. I'll come back to that. Secondly, it incorporates mutual recognition. We recognise Australia wants the same high standards as we do. I can't believe the EU and you don't want similar high standards. Mutual recognition of regulation is critically important to a free trade agreement. It is critically important. Let me come back, though, to the fact that our FTA with Australia is not a customs union. What that meant was, when New Zealand wanted to negotiate a free trade agreement with China, Australia wasn't ready to do that. We were the first country in the world to do it. Not only do we have a free trade agreement with China today, New Zealand's the only country in the world to have a free trade agreement with China, another one with Hong Kong, and a third one with Taipei, all with Beijing's acquiescence. But what we've learned about free trade agreements is this, that the benefits that accrue from them far exceed the pre-agreement analyses. If you take the China agreement, for example, the pre-agreement analysis suggested a certain benefit out of it. The actual benefits we've achieved not only exceeded the pre-agreement analysis by 100%, it's exceeded it 11-fold, 11 times. The pre-agreement analysis suggested we achieve a certain amount of trade in 20 years. In fact, we achieved that in 20 weeks. 20 weeks. Ladies and gentlemen, free trade agreements must be high quality though. If you do quick, nasty ones, you'll regret them for 15, 20 years or more. As Barry said, UK's announced wanting to do agreements with the United States, Australia, New Zealand. That's great, but it'll all depend on your Brexit deal, especially with the US. You sign up to the wrong Brexit deal, you won't be getting a free trade agreement with the US. The ambassador made that very clear the other day. Plurilateral agreements, they take leadership. New Zealand actually started the Trans-Pacific Partnership that Barry referred to. I started it. We started with Singapore. There were very few direct trade benefits from that. It was all about a new model trade agreement that others could join. First Chile and Brunei joined it. That was 1% of the global economy. Then progressively, Australia, Malaysia, Vietnam, Japan, Canada, Mexico, Peru, and of course the United States joined in and then pulled out again. But that combination of countries is 30% of the global economy. It started coming into effect 3 days ago. Now, the United Kingdom has indicated it wants to join the TPP. It would be fabulous to bring the Asia-Pacific to the doorstep of Europe. The dynamic impact on Europe could be extraordinary, but TPP requires you to have your own control over your own regulatory policy. To join TPP, I don't see how you can if your regulations are being determined in Brussels. Finally, the multilateral pillar. Multilateral pillar is so important because you get the greatest benefit for your economy from multilateral trade agreements, the greatest opportunity to enhance global value chains. WTO, critically important. I sense the UK is not taking it sufficiently seriously at the moment. The way you're talking about handling countries with specific tariff quotas is going to get you into real trouble at the WTO, believe me, and you don't need that. 164 members, you only need one to cause you problems there. WTO, though, is having some challenges today, but it still matters critically. The disciplines of the Uruguay round helped us get through the global financial crisis. The sanitary and phytosanitary agreement of the WTO, so important for agri-foods trade. The dispute resolution system has been a tremendously successful system. Right now, though, WTO needs UK leadership. I'll never forget, I chaired one of the main working groups of the WTO, 4 main working groups at the Great Battle for Seattle in 1999 when we tried to launch what became the Doha round. The EU were being extraordinarily difficult, extraordinarily difficult. Did I miss the rational voice of the UK? You know, sometimes I feel you people don't see yourselves as others see you. Never forget, you are the 5th biggest economy in the world. You have a history of global trade. You have a heritage of global leadership. Today, the world needs you to step up. Whatever you do, don't waste this moment. Don't miss this opportunity. Thank you.
Wow, there's a challenge to change a mindset and change things after 40 years of EU membership. Now we're going